Hi everyone. This is Daniel with Astoria Mutual Aid, and I'm here with Isto Barton from Astoria Mutual Aid Team Funding. Hi, Isto. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Isto, you are originally from Texas. Can you talk a little bit about that journey from Texas to Astoria and what that means as being a part of Astoria, being a part of the Astoria community?
Yeah, wow, I could talk about that for a really long time, but uh, I, growing up in Texas, I really grew to love the kind of casual nature of community, specifically in Austin. The fact that you could meet friends together at a bar and connect on a regular basis. And in fact, actually, there's a large community of my friends that have moved to Astoria since from Austin, and I followed them here. And I really enjoy the Astoria community. It feels very similar in that regard. You've got the beer garden and a number of different places that have become local haunts. There's also a really strong sense of community and also very, very good food. So a lot of parallels in that realm.
And being like a small town, Astoria, which I like to think it is like a small town. Um, what did it mean to you when COVID really struck the Astoria and this part of Queens, or it really shut down Queens last year? Um what did that mean for you? And um can you just talk about that process of going through that?
Yeah, I I would say that the biggest thing that it made me realize is that I didn't spend a lot of time here and that I didn't know my neighbors very well. That was a value I had like written down consciously for myself, but had never really put a lot of effort into. I think in New York, for a lot of people, a commute is a regular part of your day and something I miss a lot right now still. But I mean, you can very easily spin yourself between like five different neighborhoods in Manhattan in a day. And I certainly did not spend a whole lot of time here. And since then, it became really clear that there was not a whole lot of roots that I had put into the community here and not a lot of people that I knew. And also a strong sense that you kind of needed to be able to rely on the people around you. So I'd say probably the biggest thing when COVID hit was just an understanding of um, a community I did not really feel a big part of yet, and
And
wanting to fix that.
and when did you join Astoria Mutual Aid?
um, I remember doing some Zoom onboarding session in the late spring, and then I ended up getting involved with the funding team in the late summer.
And just kind of going back to that community question of not having your roots laid in Astoria before COVID, has working with AMAN helped with that?
Yes, yes, dramatically so. I mean, you would think that, I mean, I've spent more time at restaurants. I've gotten to know a couple of people that have worked in the neighborhood, coffee shops and whatnot. But we've joked about this in the funding team that we've gotten to know each other. I've gotten to know you uh, all online, just like so many other people over this last year. And so it was such a weird experience when we had the picnic in Socrates. And going back to that idea of everyone commuting anywhere in Manhattan, being able to realize that everyone was available to get there within a 20 to 30-minute period of time. It, you kind of forgot that everyone that you were spending all of this time with was in your same neighborhood. And when somebody was like, "Oh, I was at, I don't know, Diamond Dogs or what," just like, I know that. Oh, that's right. We all live in the same place. So yeah, in a weird way, they're like cyber roots. Everyone's super close, and there's this feeling like we'll all be able to be together in person so quickly at some point. But I have those roots. We just, very rarely in person.
And so just to talk a little bit about like your team and working with the funding team. Um, funding is can be a hot potato word in um especially in this sector. Um, what have been some of the surprises or joys of working with your team and working on funding projects?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I'd say that I came from a nonprofit background right out of college, and I was originally working for Habitat for Humanity, and so we would do things like major fundraisers, membership drives, grants. I got started in grants, and I haven't been doing grants as much. I'm not necessarily administratively as competent as some of our other team members, but it's a lot of documents, a lot of coordination, a lot of forward planning that goes into kind of a traditional nonprofit funding sector. And while we have a fiscal sponsor, like, we are not a nonprofit, we're a mutual aid society, right? And so um, simply being a body that is going to respond to the need in the community, like, makes it really challenging to do forward thinking planning in the way that most traditional funding sources are structured. And not only that, but we are a group of volunteers that are all dedicating small amounts of time. And so even if we were to have really comprehensive forward looking plans, which is possible, being able to assemble all of the documents and the coordination to get us there is its own unique challenge. And yeah, I mean, I'd say that's been one of the more humbling, surprising, and meditative reflections I've had working with the team.
And coming from like a background of working with Habitat for Humanity, which is um, obviously a lot more structured, a lot more um, typical nonprofit sector. Um, and with Astoria Mutual Aid being more decentralized, but also maybe being, like you talked about, it's kind of hard to look forward thinking, and that kind of goes into having to be a lot more agile and just change as you need to. Um, have there been some I guess some interesting victories in that of that I guess just changing that mindset of the background that you typically would see Habitat for Humanity in. Um, I think being more lean sometimes you learn to be just tap into your resources a little more, and just so I guess that's the question is just some things that maybe some lessons learned that could be applied other
Oh,
areas.
yeah, absolutely. You know, I think that there are a lot of people. Well, so we did a fundraising drive at the end of the year in December, and we didn't really have a whole lot of bandwidth. And normally, so many hours of planning would go into an end of year fundraising drive. And it was really kind of a struggle to get enough people together and connected, enough to send a few emails, and I mean, it wasn't the end of the world, but like, it took more effort with everyone's disparate schedules than you would think. And I remember like really wondering how it was going to play out, and feeling like I wasn't really doing a whole lot, and feeling kind of guilty about it, like wishing I had had more time to provide. And the whole thing went forward, and we ended up raising north of $30,000 in that last month. And the vast majority of that was from the existent members of Astoria Mutual Aid. And so, with, not no effort, but a smaller amount of effort than normally would be needed to be exerted, we were able to raise quite a bit of money. And at the park, we were selling sweatshirts. And I think that one of the bigger things that I've realized is that, simply showing up and being present in and of itself does quite a lot more than you would think.
And so I'm just gonna kind of change gears a little bit here. So your background is you have a theater background, right?
Yes, yeah.
So which I have a theater background as well.
I didn't know that, Daniel.
I
What?
It's hidden. Yes, it's hidden. That's actually why I moved to New York originally. And I was thinking of a question that um I wanted to throw at you, but I guess I'll throw it in now because we're going to talk a little bit about just the role of acting and whatnot. But my question is Romeo and Juliet, comedy or tragedy?
Oh, interesting question. As with any of Shakespeare's plays, it's a good mix of both. There's definitely a lot of comedy in there if you are willing to play up the vast majority of lewd jokes that are in there. But ultimately, it's a really sad story about miscommunication. So tragedy.
Okay, awesome. I noticed that you're a lover of Shakespeare. And I always like asking that question to anyone that has a Shakespearean background because you get a wide range of answers from that. That being said, coming from an acting background, um, the the thing of listening and being empathetic, has that how has that translated into your work in working with an organization like AMAN or with Habitat for Humanity or in life in general? Um, that word empathetic, which is thrown around a lot these days, but I think it's a key word or a key mindset when you're working with other people in general. So yeah. Sorry, that was my curveball. Not the Romeo and Juliet one. but
There,
empathy. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot in there. I, I think that particular, I mean, with any kind of work, having the ability to listen to differing opinions and imagine how other people are feeling and consider them in your actions and the way that you move forward is really important. And I think that a lot of our societal structures have been built in a way that don't listen to all voices. And that's something that is becoming a larger, of more import. Uh, and I would say that that's part of the reason why I have enjoyed working with AMAN so far, is that it has been really good at raising and, I'd say, equalizing uh, different voices and making sure that people are communicating with one another, even if it's in a somewhat chaotic Slack workspace. It's still really important to raise each other up and to provide that space. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, you answered that very well, considering I threw it out of left field. But um, and I guess just a couple more questions. And that is what I guess, well, let me just state this for now. So if somebody wanted to get involved with the funding team, and how can they find you, and what are maybe some of the things that you might need help with?
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm sure that all groups would say this, but I think that one of the so I'm taking a break right now because I needed a moment. Um, I would say that anyone that has consistent time to show up uh, is already doing a lot. Like I was saying, simply showing up and being a continuing presence does a lot more than you think it would. So even if you just show up to say hi, either team funding or I'm sure any other team would very much appreciate that presence. That said, with the funding team, we have a number of folks that are focusing on grants, not just for AMAN, but for other groups that work with AMAN. I think that over the next year or so, trying to ramp up more ways to raise money, fundraisers, partnerships. We've got a fantastic team. Liz and Suma have both been thinking about, and Eugene have all been thinking about a lot of these really great inventive ideas. So if you're somebody that would love to coordinate a bake sale, or somebody that has fun ideas or partnerships locally in Astoria and can think of a way to raise money, or think that you would enjoy doing that, we would love to have you come. And especially if you have any kind of administrative coordination abilities, if you have any energy left over at the end of the day to help out, either team funding or any other team would love to get you. But if you want team funding, we're meeting right now on Mondays at 7:30, and you can go to the hashtag team-funding Slack channel.
Awesome. And one last question. So what gets you up in the morning? What inspires you? What gets you through the day?
Oh, Daniel, what a hard question to answer on March 30th in a year into a pandemic. Oh man, I don't know. I because what else would we do? I try and be really organized around thinking about goals and what I want to do with my life. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about how to continue to grow and push myself in different ways. And in setting things in motion so that I can rely on momentum. And so most days when I'm getting up, it's because, I've built a world around me that depends on my presence, that allows me to slowly move in that direction. I don't know if that sounds like a cruel answer. It's probably the most honest thing I could say, though. That's not horribly depressing.
No, I mean, I appreciate it, because it's life is not just always about lofty ideals. It is about getting up in the morning, and sometimes that's all we can do. Sometimes we do have to acknowledge that we have, like you said, a world around us, or especially our immediate world around us, that depends on us, and that's okay. That's I don't think we always, like I said, we don't always have to have like these glorious answers, because when it really does come down to it, sometimes it is just putting one foot in front of the other, and especially during, like you said, this 1 year into this pandemic. Like, if I were to ask you this question a year ago, it would have been a different answer. 6 months ago, it would have been a different answer. But I love the fact that you answered where you are right now, And I think that that's important, you know, because
Well,
honestly,
thanks. And I hope I have a better answer in 3 months.
I mean, I just think that sometimes people just need to hear, look, you just gotta, you literally just need to put one foot in front of the other right now. Like I had a friend of mine, they were kind of going through a lull, and they wanted these, you know, a glorious, motivation for them. And I said, "Yeah, how do you do that during COVID sometimes? Like, I mean, New York compared to the rest of the country, especially, this is that Groundhog Day, right? Like, this is that thing that is just kind of like, okay, yeah, what day is it again? Like, like when the 1 year came around a couple of weeks ago, I just I didn't even realize it was March, so I appreciate the honesty of the answer. Just saying. Um, but Isto, thank you for chatting with me today. And thank you for everything that you and Team Funding have done. And I do also like the fact, I'm just going to say this, that you're taking some time away. I encourage everyone to do that. And if you know me, you know that I do encourage people to do that, that it's it's okay to take a break every now and then, because I believe that if sometimes we don't because we're afraid what's going to happen to the operation, that something's going to fall. And you have to have that belief that there is always somebody behind you willing to step in. I think sometimes we're afraid to ask that, you know.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, Aman, in my experience so far, is all about the support network of community, and we've got a really fantastic community over at Team Funding, and they're a really lovely group of folks. And I mean, shout out to Suma also, who at the picnic was giving me a pep talk, and she was like, "Hey, you can take a break. Why don't you take a break?" So shout out to her for that. Shout out to the rest of the folks there. Shout out to Macy, who introduced me to Aman for the very first time. And shout out to you, Daniel. Thanks for doing these spotlights. They're really fun.
Cool. Thanks, Sisto.
Thank you.